On today's podcast, we had Dan come on. So Dan is a co-host of MetaMind's podcast. He has also DanTube, which is a very cool YouTube channel to check out too. A lot of tech reviews and all this kind of stuff, and cameras and a bunch of other stuff for recommending checking out. Dan is also a counsellor as well. So in this episode, we talked about starting out a podcast, all this kind of stuff. Even talking about perfectionism and how it doesn't have to be perfect at the start, and imposter syndrome. So there was a lot of value that was spoke about in this podcast. And also to check out all Dan's socials and all his media stuff, which I'll link down below as well. And then just before we jump into the podcast, if you'd like to support the podcast that extra little bit, go to patreon.com/studio mindfulness. I'll link that down below as well. But I hope you enjoyed today's episode, guys.
Sweet. Welcome to the show, Jen. How are you?
I'm going very well. Thank you for having me on the show. How are you going?
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you. And thank you for coming on. Appreciate it heaps. So, I guess there's a lot of stuff we can go down with this episode. And I know I'm just going to go with the flow with it. But we'll start off with what kind of got you into doing, say, your own podcasts, getting into your filming and all this kind of stuff.
Yeah, so I think it was kind of a natural progression, which is something that I like to tell a lot of people who are thinking about starting out. I had this as well, and I still have this to this day, like this idea of a perfectionist mindset where it has to be perfect before you release it, and you have to have the right filming gear and the right, microphones and backlights and everything. But, how I started was with a webcam. Like my video journey started with a webcam, no script, no editing. It was just impromptu app reviews, really. That's how it all started. And from there, it's gone to the point that now, I actually put a lot of effort into the production. I also run a podcast with my good friend, and it's completely changed from there. But, if you told younger Dan, where do you see yourself? It's like, well, I had no idea where I was going to be. And that's, I think, what a lot of people struggle with, this idea that it has to be perfect straight off the bat. So for me, it honestly just started as this kind of humble thing where it's like, I'm just going to put myself out there and start creating content. I had no idea where I was going with it. But yeah, that's how it all really started, to be honest with you, the whole journey.
Yeah, I do completely understand that, because I guess it's the same with me. It took me 2 years before I was talking about doing a podcast before I actually started. And then you create all these constructs in your head, how perfect it's going to be. You have to have this kind, you have to say, for my instance, I thought you had to build like a big business or something before you jumped in and did something like, for a podcast. But then I realized it's just you just start and see where you go. Like normally have an idea where you want to go, but then as the further I've gone on through this journey is more that I've kind of got away from the thing I thought I was going to, and it's taken me in a direction that's actually more fulfilling for myself, and I never thought I'd be going down.
Yeah, that's it, man. And I think two really important things to remember is when you start this journey, it's highly likely that no one will see your content. No one will be looking at what you're doing anyway. So to worry about the judgment and to worry about what are they going to think of me? It's for the most part, no one will actually be seeing it. So to some extent, that actually is a little bit refreshing when I tell people who are starting out this journey. It's it can be a bit of an ego killer, but it's let's be real here. They will not see your content straight up. It takes a very long time to compound the effects of creating something and actually having eyeballs on you. So that early stage is actually the experimental stage. That's kind of the fun part, even when I think about how MetaMinds, the podcast that we host, it started with this super elaborate kind of concept that we came up with, and we're like, yeah, we know what we're doing. We've been creating content for so long. But the reality was it came out and we watched the first episode recently, and it's that isn't actually anywhere near where we are now. And it's changed so much since that first point. And that's people who have been creating for a long time, we still had no idea, it will pivot and change. So that's one really big thing that I think just really, really sits with me. It's, you've got to be very clear that it's whatever you think your vision is, it's going to change. And I think the most important thing is really trying to unpack your why. Why are you trying to create this content, and what do you want your message to be? That's the fundamental early stages, I guess.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. It's, to know, I guess, why you're doing it and, to actually get to know it. Because sometimes it's like, I know for myself at the start, I thought my why was a certain thing, but then at the end of the day, it was just an emotion that was coming up for me. And I'm like, I felt like I needed to share.
Mm.
And I guess that's what I explained to some people as well. It's like, you don't have to have your why generally written down. If you've got a burning desire, the why will come once you starting, and then you'll be able to put into words, and it'll be so much easier to explain to people.
Yeah.
Then also from like the start, it's like, it's perfect, because then you look at, say, I keep a lot of, as I was saying, I'm like, as this journey goes on, I'll still keep all my old content up to show people what it's like from when you start to now. Because I think it's important that we see this regression, because if you actually think of it, it's, most people don't do this overnight. It's a 10-year journey majority of the time.
100%. Yeah. It's that whole idea of like, they're an overnight success after 10 years of grinding.
Yeah.
It's like people only ever see the success. They don't see the blood, sweat, and tears that went in for 10 years straight of them putting content out.
And I think that's like the magical bit about the internet now, is that you can see the 10 years progression as to where it started.
Yeah, exactly. I love that.
So because I briefly know, when did you and your business partner started Men of Minds, the podcast?
So that was 2 years ago now. We started in 2019, beginning of 2019. And yeah, like the whole, I guess, story behind why we started was him and I were sitting down having some really, healing, deep conversations about things that we were experiencing and things that we were going through. And we would occasionally kind of chuck out this, oh, we should start a podcast kind of comment. And it was like, oh yeah, man, that's funny and everything. We'd move on with our lives. Nothing would kind of come of it. And it just got to the point that we said it a few times. We were like, no, seriously, man, like, why are we not doing this? Like, even if we can just impact one life, like, why are we not doing this? We have to put this out to the world. Like, we're confident on camera. There's no major barrier in our way. Like, what's actually stopping us? And then when we started unpacking what it was that was stopping us and started to understand the barriers that were in our way, and then we challenged those barriers, and it got to the point that we literally filmed 3 videos within an afternoon, and we started.
That's it. It's normally how it goes. So what would you say those challenges were for you guys?
So a lot of it was to do with mindset and judgment, really. A lot of it was to do with, like, for me, I'm a counsellor. That's my profession. And for me, it was like, I've been doing tech reviews on my channel, and I've shown a little bit of myself, but people don't really know like a deep amount about Dan outside of just Dan's Tube and the tech stuff that I do. And to me, it was like, this is quite a challenging space to get into, because I'm disclosing a lot about myself, and I work with clients. So I have to be careful with the kind of stuff that I'm putting out onto the internet. So that was one of my biggest objections. And I think Eamon's was kind of in a similar space, like just exposing himself so much to the internet. Like, it's quite a confronting, vulnerable space to be in. So that was like the biggest objection. And then the other stuff was just the technical stuff. Like, are we going to film this? Where do we distribute this? How do we format it? But then the main thing was actually just the fear of putting it out there. And then once we challenged that, all of the logical stuff and the actual behind the scenes stuff, that you can research that. You can find that online. It's more so you've got to overcome your own hurdle, and then it becomes a lot easier.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's the biggest thing with starting, or even just taking action. It's that person in the mirror when you look into every day. It's like you hold yourself back. You create all these barriers in your head to say why you can't do it. But then when you actually think of it, all those things that you just created yourself, it's not a reality. Well, it's a reality in that inner world. But when you actually, start, you kind of realize those roadblocks aren't as big as you think.
Yeah, exactly right. And like, just for like a little bit of reflection, I haven't really touched on this before, but I remember after we filmed those first 3 episodes, I remember actually watching the first whole episode back before I published it, and actually being very almost fearful. Like, I actually had this visceral reaction, like, inside of my body, like a physical reaction, like, wow, I'm actually showing a lot of myself. Like, I'm exploring a lot of themes that I've potentially never said online before. It's like quite a confronting thought to think I'm going to put myself out there. So for me, it was like, yeah, quite a big step to take that. But then again, it's like, that's now disappeared, and I don't feel that at all. And it took a while to get to that, but I think it's normal. That's kind of the whole theme of it. Like, I've been creating content online for years, and to then do a podcast, it's like I still had those reactions of like, fears around interviewing a guest and how I'd present on camera and the types of things I'd say on the camera or say to a camera, basically. So like, just to reiterate the point for people listening, it's like, it is completely normal to have a fear, regardless of how long you've been doing it for.
Yeah, and I still get, I still get nervous before jumping on a podcast. I get a bit fearful. My head starts, so about an hour before a podcast, my head starts going 100 miles an hour. And it's like these things, one thing that I've learned with these things, it's probably better to have them. It's kind of healthy in some way, because it's something that I've come across is that sometimes having that fear is that little bit of energy or ability to, I guess, perform a bit better.
100%, man. Yeah, like I couldn't imagine, what it would be like if you didn't have that fear. Like I think that is the fuel that kind of allows you to be intentional in the words that you're saying. Because if you didn't have a fear, you'd just be splurting out utter terrible comments, I can imagine. Like not you personally, but just in general, like there'd be no filter there. So the fear actually allows you to be intentional in what you're trying to say.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Because it's like a lot of the time, because I was thinking about this today, and I'm like, a lot of the time we deny so much of being human and all these other quote unquote bad emotions. We try and push them down and thinking that no one else, kind of in our own perception, that no one else feels them. But it's all part of being human. And it's kind of the important part of being human and the exciting part that you get to feel all these things that come up.
Yeah, that's exactly right, man. Like I've recently been hosting a few Clubhouse rooms through the app Clubhouse, and connecting with other human beings all over the world and discussing these kind of themes in an open forum. It's been unbelievably refreshing because we're talking to high caliber people who are steps above where I'm at, like well and truly above me, but they're having imposter syndrome. They're still being fearful of what they're putting out there and what people are thinking of them. It's like, it really is a human reaction. Like we are social beings, and like we don't have, in the caveman days, we don't have the lions and the saber-toothed tigers. We don't have actual physical threats as much anymore. So social threats are the biggest thing. Like one of the biggest, like Maslow's laws of belonging is like the whole idea of connection and belonging in a tribe. So of course we're going to have fears around what people are going to think of us. That's just a normal thing. So like you said, one of the most important things is to be aware of that and to accept that that's a normal reaction. That's completely fine.
That's it. Because at the end of the day, is coming back to what you're saying, it's like those things come up for us because we are such tribal animals. We don't want to be rejected by the tribe because that means we'll be unsafe. And that's kind of a good thing in some way, because even when you get in the business round, you kind of need to build a tribe around you to get to, I guess, the goals that you set, because it is pretty hard to do it on your own, and most people can't do it on their own.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's probably one of the things that even I have reflected on recently. It's the idea that, when I started my YouTube journey, I was like, I can do this all on my own. Everything's fine. But you have to have people around you. And like the whole idea of outsourcing what you're doing, like outsourcing your weaknesses, is something that's becoming a lot more apparent to me now. And I think it's quite an ego reaction for a lot of people just to go, I can do it all on my own, me. But to actually be able to accept that you need help and to open up, connect with the tribe like that is really like profoundly helpful, I think.
Definitely, because it's something that I've just started doing myself, is started outsourcing properly with a lot of stuff, especially when it comes to writing and that, because I'm dyslexic, so I've had a lot of trouble with writing and making stuff make sense. So I guess with, say, like some of my programs, and I'll outsource them to someone else, like, hey, can you go over this and write it out properly for me? And I'll just put it in dot points, and this is what I want, and then just to bounce back and forward with things.
Yeah, nice, man. How are you finding that going for you? Is that working?
Yeah, it's going well, man. It's been good.
Yeah, nice. That's so good.
So we'll touch back base on because this is something I talk about with a few people, especially over the last couple of weeks with other coaches and that, especially ones that are just starting out, like imposter syndrome. What are some of the tools and tricks you use to help to deal with that?
Good question. I think imposter syndrome is one of those things similar to the ego that will always be there. Like I think it's very hard, unless you're a monk meditating 24 hours a day, to not have an ego reaction. So I think it always comes down to the first crucial step is awareness. like straight when you feel that reaction, or like those emotions arise within you, whether it's fear or anger or resentment, like whatever those emotions are that are coming up inside of you when you're thinking you're not good enough or you're comparing yourself to other people. The first thing is awareness, like recognizing those emotions and being aware, like, okay, this is how I'm feeling, this is how my body's reacting, and that's completely okay. And I think, for example, if I've had like some big reactions to certain things, I will journal it. I'll write it down in my book, to actually be aware that, okay, I've had this emotion and I've felt this way, but there's a reason behind why I've been feeling this way. And then like a lot of kind of counseling knowledge from my end comes in, where it's like the next crucial step is really just accepting it, accepting that that's happening, accepting that you're comparing yourself to other people. And I think in the specific realm of imposter syndrome, normally there's a trigger or a situation that's caused that to happen. So for example, a lot of the time, if you're scrolling Instagram or Facebook or YouTube, whatever platform you're on, normally that could be the reason why you're experiencing imposter syndrome, because you're actually seeing so many other people doing a similar thing to you, or you're comparing yourself to others. So I think a really crucial thing is make sure that you have interests and things you enjoy outside of that thing that you're trying to do, because you'll find that just experiencing life will actually help you ground you. Like it will bring you back to that kind of homeostasis, that neutral point where, that creativity can flow back through you again. If you're caught in that comparison and in that imposter mindset where it's like, I'm not good enough, how can I ever be as good as that person? How can I ever make $1 million from it? Whatever those thoughts are, which a lot of people have. It's really just actually removing yourself away from that situation that's potentially causing that trigger, which again leads into the awareness. You have to be aware of what's actually happening in that situation. So I think they're kind of the main things that I find myself doing. And then, there's like practical tools like meditation, journaling, going to the gym, even doing like flotation therapy, for example, which is a form of mindfulness. Or a really crucial thing as well for me is just hanging out with good people, like catching up with a friend. They don't have to be in the same space as you, just a good friend that you can just forget about what's happening in your life for 30-40 minutes and just be present with that one human being. You'll find that will actually allow the creativity to flow again, and it will kind of combat that imposter syndrome that you're feeling, because you're just going to be trapped in that mindset if you stay with it.
You exactly are right. I love how you say that too, because it's also is spending time with people. Take yourself away, have a break from it, create some free space. The best way I would do it too, because it's something I do a lot. I try and do a lot of the time in the morning, where I just go for a walk in nature, go hang out at the beach or something, just create some space where I guess I'm off the internet and that I can just walk, clear my head. And that's probably when I come up with the best ideas with things. And that's when I bring my journal with me, write ideas down, because I have that space where I'm away from technology, and then I don't have, the comparison thing we're talking about.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Because that's it. Like even, the whole idea of like a lot of the psychological, I guess, illnesses that people experience, like whether that's anxiety or depression, a lot of the time it is the fact that this theme is being perpetuated by the environment that we're in. So for example, with a depressive state where you are experiencing a very low mood, unfortunately, a lot of the time, you don't feel like you want to leave. You don't feel like you want to reach out to a friend, or you don't feel like you're worthy a lot of the time. But actually removing yourself from that environment and taking yourself for a walk, it'll release the chemicals into your body that will actually allow a little bit of hope and just a glimpse of what is possible. And sometimes that's all it takes to allow that snowball to happen.
Yeah, I love that how you mention that, because that's so true. That's a lot of the stuff that I've come across as well, is, because especially the environments we're constantly on social media, a lot of people, and it kind of puts us, because it's such a, I guess, not an environment a human's been in its whole life. I mean, whole generations, I should say. So then, when we get in these states, it kind of pushes down. Lost my train of thought with that, but I'll go back to what they're saying. It's like, they're saying, yes, if you go to say when you go to the environment or nature or whatever, that kind of boosts your, I guess, serotonin levels, and helps to bring you back to that normal state, as you're saying.
Yeah, it's crucial. It really is.
So I guess when did Dan TV start out for you?
So like it started, like I mentioned at the beginning there, with the webcam. So
Mm.
the reason behind why I did it was I had moved here with my mum to Australia from England, and I wasn't fitting in with anyone. Like I was being bullied, didn't have a really solid friend group, didn't feel like I belonged or connected with anyone, and that's such a common experience for kids, especially when through high school, kids can be really horrible people, especially to the new kid who's here. He's got an accent, he's from England, he's this new person. So, a lot of that just got me so down, and it just made me just play games and just stay in that negative, toxic environment of just being within my own head and within my own space. And for whatever reason, which is such an odd kind of reaction, I thought, well, I'm going to put myself out on the internet. I'm going to be able to connect with whoever then, and that's potentially going to open up options for me. Like I wasn't fearful of putting myself out in like the big regards. Like, yes, I was nervous about the idea of I'm putting myself out there, but that wasn't the thing that was stopping me. It was actually the opportunity to be able to actually find friends and people who cared about me, because I just didn't feel like I had that. So yeah, it just literally started with me going, well, I'm into video games, I like technology, maybe I can start something with that. And then from there, it's snowballed, and it's become a lot more of a high-end tech channel now. So I review lots of drones and cameras and like underwater drones and, VR headsets and whatnot. But when it first started, it was just app reviews, because when I conceptualized what I actually had available to me, it was I have a webcam and I have my phone. So I can download an app and I can film on a webcam what's happening on my phone. That was all I had available to me. Didn't have a capture card, so I couldn't capture card like video games. So it was literally like, well, this is what I have available. Let's start this journey. Like, I know it's not going to be great, but let's just see where it can go. And yeah, from there, like connecting with people was that actually the thing that made me want to continue going, because I connected with people all over the world who I'd text, like literally they'd have my number and they would text me from all across the world. They'd add me on, don't think Messenger was a thing then, just on Facebook basically. And yeah, we would talk, and that was amazing. That actually genuinely helped me get out of this really toxic, negative space that I was in within myself.
And I think that's the most powerful thing with the internet too, because a lot of the time, I've spoke about this on previous podcasts, is that I guess now it's like we have the opportunity, say if we don't get along with the people in the area we live in, that we can expand out and meet like-minded people. And then sometimes they're probably just in a couple K radius to us and we don't even realize that.
Yeah, that's exactly right, man. And I think, the internet in general, like we've had a few podcasts on this, like it can, like in terms of the tool isn't the negative part of it. It's actually the way that people are using it in certain avenues, I guess, certain social platforms. But there are still some amazing opportunities on there. Like, you've got Facebook groups. You can literally connect with people who have the exact same interest as you. Like if they're into eating a plant-based life, having a plant-based lifestyle, or they're into drones, or they're into cupcakes, there will be a Facebook group, there'll be a Reddit community for that. And you can actually just immediately connect with people who have similar interests, which will immediately start the conversations. You have something to share, something to communicate about. And it's a lot less likely that you're going to be able to just walk down the road and bump into someone who's into like a hyper niche thing that you're into, for example. So, I think that's the most powerful aspect of it. And just, linking it back to Clubhouse, like I was mentioning before, that's another platform that's actually really encouraging genuine communities. And it's taking away a lot of this curated content where people are just putting out a snapshot of their highlight reel as such. They're not talking about the days that they're down and the days that they're depressed, or they've stopped talking to a friend and they're completely lost. They don't know what to do with themselves. It's like people don't share that as much, and that needs to be a bit more of a common narrative, because otherwise this whole idea of everyone's perfect outside of me is so hard to stomach, because that's all you see online a lot of the time.
We need to bring back to humanity, back to line, back to online, which is I think that'll help humanity so much to realize, because that's what I try and do sometimes, especially if I do a live or something. If I'm going through something, on say I'll do a live on Facebook, I'll share it and say, this is what's going on in my life. I don't have everything perfect. Like I have this trigger coming up for me. I've had this situation, because I want to make people realize, yeah, I can intellectual understand the stuff or embody it, but I still have my days where I don't feel great.
Yeah, exactly. And everyone has those days. Every single person, regardless of what position or status they have, like everyone has a down day. So that, like you said, bring back the humanity, bring back the actual real essence of being a human being.
Yeah, and that's like the bit I love about podcasting, half the reason why I got into it, because people were more vulnerable on a long form conversation and then say the 3-minute clip you see on Instagram, or 30-second clip you see on Facebook, TikTok, blah blah blah. Because like you can have an in-depth conversation of what's actually going on. And this is like, as Joe Rogan says, this is the closest thing you can get to a real conversation that you would listen to at the say a coffee shop or something.
Yeah. No, that's the power of podcasting, man. It's not a curated piece of content like Instagram or YouTube or Facebook. It's raw. It's 30 minutes of someone splurting out consciousness. It's not like you're going, actually, can you just cut that out, or let's edit that part there, or let's put a timestamp here so we'll kind of jump this part. That doesn't happen.
No, I've had people ask me that too, and I'm like, I really don't want to do it because I want to like show people that you're a human being, and it's okay to stuff up, as I like did before. I'm not going to edit that bit out to show that I am human. I stuff up with my train of thought sometimes, and you even say I'll pick on Jordan Peterson. He does it sometimes as well, and he's got a big platform in that.
Yeah, it's crucial, man. Like the idea of vulnerability is seen as a weakness by a lot of people, but it's actually one of the biggest strengths to be able to put yourself out there. Like no one's perfect. To be this imperfect form is the most beautiful part of a podcast and being a human. So like that's why I think podcasting is such a powerful platform.
And it's definitely the reason why it exploded as much as it has, especially over the last couple of years.
Yeah.
But yeah, man. I'll finish up on this question, dude. What is the legacy you want to create?
Love that. See, the thing that it always comes back to this for me, and it's kind of why I got into counseling in the first place. I just want to be able to impact people in a positive way. I want to be able to leave a positive impact on people and help people in whatever capacity that is. And through MetaMinds as well, like our big focus now is to empower ambitious and time poor people to unlock the life of their dreams. So I genuinely believe that everyone within them has a dream life. And that's my goal, to be able to help as many people as I possibly can to live that dream life.
That is powerful. And I definitely resonate with that. It's just like, I guess one of my things is just helping people. That's the reason why I got into this as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, sweet, man. Yeah, thank you heaps for coming on, man. I'll link everything up in the bio and stuff for you too. But yeah, very much appreciated.
Awesome, man. I appreciate your time. It was awesome.
Cheers for tuning in today's episode, guys. Give it a thumbs up. Let me know what you think, and also if you think a friend would value from this, please share it with them. And also, before I let you go too, guys, my Rewrite Your Story video course is out now as well, and just go to my website to be able to get that. And also on the 5th of April, I'm launching Re-Engineer Your Mindset program. So if you'd like to register for that, either contact me through any of my socials or go to studio or email me at Studio of Mindfulness. So that's with the last S as a number 5 at gmail.com. And thank you guys for all the support and appreciate it, and have a good one.